Here we go. Okay, I'm just going to start today, just our class with, again, just the Heart Sutra, and that's it, because it'll be sort of a question and answer discussion class, so I'd like to have time for that. Okay, so Heart Sutra, to bless our space here, homage to perfection, wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I have heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Vajrayana, vast Vulture's mountain, to gather the great assembly of monks and nuns and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in the concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, was looking perfectly at the practice of profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Superior Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequently, looking perfectly and correctly also the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is none other than form. Form is also none other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They are not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement and separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so forth up to a mentality element, and also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, so forth up to no aging and death, and no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there is no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing utterly beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest, complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the equal and unequal mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayatam Gata Gata Paragata Parsam Gati Bodhisoha. Shariputra, a bodhisattva, a great being, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. The Blessed One arose from that concentration and said to Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, that he'd spoken well. Good, O son of lineage, it's like that, since it's like that just as you have revealed. In that way, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Spirit Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva, the Great Being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted and highly praised what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Okay, great. And one more thing, of course, the important thing here is just we're going to, just in our hearts, take refuge to the three jewels, just in a moment, sort of setting our proper sort of intention here with refuge. And again, that Buddha is the great doctor, the Dharma in particular, the ultimate Dharma being wisdom, realizing emptiness, being the supreme medicine. And the Sangha being the sort of nursing staff, hospital staff, EMTs, paramedics, and everybody helping the doctor. And now our intention here is always bodhicitta. I mean, whatever we do, be put towards the enlightenment of all sentient beings. When we become Buddha, that 24/7 afterwards, we lead all sentient beings to the same state. Okay, there we go. So welcome. Thanks for coming. And I'd like to just open it all up. I've just been, to be fair, doing a retreat at home. I was supposed to do a daily retreat. I did a Mahamudra retreat instead, which is really, really wonderful. I'm just finished. So I wanted to do some recording, but I found just with the retreat, I just didn't have enough time. And I would encourage everyone to do Mahamudra retreats at home as much as you can or whatever, because it's just illuminating doing them, just to sort of unfortunately see the sad news of just how polluted and messed up your mind is. That's really, really good to see, as you know, sort of checking in with getting sort of a health checkup with your doctor, and so it was very, very good. But I find that the next two classes I want to do, recordings for everybody here, are just of the structure of Kriya Tantra. Um, so it's a little bit more work. That's what sort of got me away from doing these classes before we met today, is because we're looking at doing four-limb recitation, what they call self-based, other-based, mind-based, sound-based, and then just how the different structures of the different kinds of deities, what we call the different Kriya Tantra deities, different levels of practice for Kriya Tantra. It's a little bit more work going over that, so I'll do that this week before I go back to work. So having said all that, I dumped a lot of stuff on everybody, the previous ones in particular, a lot of the precepts around Kriya Tantra, and usually when you announce that or sort of present that to people, there's a lot of questions, or people get all kind of. I've led Medicine Buddha Retreat, Kriya Tantra one in Toronto twice over the last few years. And when we go over this, you can hear a pin drop in the audience. Everyone's all upset and confused, and we have to go over everything. And then, of course, once you go over it, people get a sense of confidence and understanding with it. So any comments, discussion, or what would any good questions to start?
So I have something right out of the box, Matthew. I'm interested in doing a home retreat of Mahamudra. How do I do that? Should I speak with Rinpoche first, or can I initiate that on my own? And is there a format?
Yes, without sort of dodging the question in a real overt way, of course, just talk to Rinpoche and see what he would like, because there's different ways of doing that.
Okay.
Like this is another long discussion, but when we're talking Mahamudra in terms of the Gelugpa tradition of Mahamudra, which is a little bit different, it's a big discussion, because there's all the influence. I'm just reading that huge big book on Gelugpa Mahamudra. It's different from Rinpoche's book. It's by that one FPMT student from Lama Zopa. It's about this thick. It's hardcover. It's just wonderful. I'm almost done. But there's always been this, just like with Alexander Berson's classic commentary that he did with His Holiness on First Panchalama's Mahamudra text. That book's probably about 30 years old or something. There's this whole thing of like, does the Mahamudra tradition in the Gelugpa tradition really come from the Kagyu tradition, or can we talk about it being kind of from the visionary teachings Tsongkhapa got directly from Buddha Wisdom Manjushri? So there's always a bit of a discussion there. So there's different ways of doing Mahamudra. So the best thing is to talk to your teacher. For instance, what I've done in the past under Rinpoche's recommendation is to do 4 sessions a day. I tend to do 2 or 3 of them in the morning, because my mind's a lot more clear. And I know it sounds like copying out, because, you should be able to do them all times of the day. But generally, just like if you're doing divination, you should do divination when you first get up, not at the end of the day when you've been on your phone and stressed out and going to work, because your mind's so kind of like, there's so many veils or delusions, or you're just all kind of worked up. You're not clear. Whereas if you get up first thing in the morning, your mind's very, very clear and very awake. So I find the Mahamudra practices that I do are really, really good before noon, let's say. So what I would do is just do Guru Yoga practice of, let's say, Ganden Lagema, Tsongkhapa's Guru Yoga practice. So that's quite short. And then you just sit. And I think I might have spoken to my dear Dharma friend Rob about this, but the sessions I've been doing basically are only 45 minutes long, which isn't much. So at the end of the day, you're only doing 4 hours a day, which isn't, you think, wow, you're doing a retreat, that's not much. But you want to work on like quality over quantity, and then have it so it spills over into your day-to-day, what they call post-meditation session, where you can really, as you're going about your day, if you're at home or running errands, going shopping, go taking the dog for a walk, you're letting it's almost like I only use like cancer treatment for like radiation treatments for cancer, with friends that have had that, where they blast you with radiation and then you don't go back for a month. Like it's letting the body work with the radiation to kill the cancer. A lot of ways, if we're doing these short, very strong bursts of formal practice, when you get off the cushion, you have time to marinate or really integrate that properly. And at least in my mind, the way I feel, the longer you sit for a practice, the worse it gets. It's easy to, for me, I'm just speaking for myself. Maybe you guys are amazing, but I'm finding with me, 45 minutes, if you break that up in about three 10-minute sessions, 12, 15-minute sessions, or split it in half, 25, or something like that, you have a way of really having a good feedback of how well you're doing in that session. Because, like, for me, you've got obviously coarse or gross mental excitement. You're like super distracted. You're thinking of a million different things. Or like what always happens to me, the subtle mental excitement or mental distraction. Like I have a lot of music in my head a lot. Maybe it's my autism where you've got things like I'm focusing clear on my object, let's say meditating on my mind, but then there's other stuff on the periphery happening more subtly. That's kind of like subtle mental excitement. So you can see that clearly. But for me, the real hard thing is the subtle mental sinking. Coarse mental sinking, you drop the object because you get tired, you might even fall asleep. But the subtle mental sinking is where you think, I always say, you think you're this amazing meditator because you're just sitting there, clear as about holding the object, it's all clear, but it's flat. It's kind of like a black and white TV in the 1960s, right before color came in. And so the thing is, you're not distracted and you've got really good concentration, but there's no life in it. It's just like a picture in a book. It's not a 3D real thing. And so technically, that's not meditation. That's just a delusion. It's the sort of what they call mental factor, a secondary mind, diluted one of subtle mental sinking or mental obscuration or whatever coming into taint, like food coloring in a glass of water, taint your concentration and your mindfulness. So I find the longer I have a session of Ma Mudra, the more that comes in. So if people at the temple saw me, it's like, wow, Matthew sat for 2 hours, man. He's amazing. And it's just like, yeah, but what's really happening there, right? I can sit and put a big podcast, how amazing I am as a meditator, but basically I've just been spacing out. And, I'm just like everyone else out there is just spaced out or stoned or whatever. So shorter sessions are good and then build up. And the person that says this is, of course, one of the greatest Tibetan Buddhist masters, and that's Sakya Pandita, one of the founders of the Sakya tradition. And he always said that shoot for 12 to 15 minutes. And when you say that, you think, that's it? And he's just like, hey, it's good quality. Anything longer than that, you don't know kind of how good it is. So I would recommend that, but I'm not your teacher. Talk to Rinpoche, see what he'd like you to do. But just do lots of shorter sessions and just sit like that. Yeah. And technically, like that's what First Panchen Lama says is in Gelugpa Trish, we talk about Sutric Ma Mudra and Tantric Ma Mudra. So Sutric Ma Mudra is just where we're doing meditating on the mind itself, which is in other Tibetan traditions like Kagyu tradition and so forth. And that's just one of the four mindfulnesses that you get even in Theravada Buddhism, where we talk about mindfulness body, mindfulness of sensations, mindfulness of the body, and then mindfulness of the objects of mind or phenomena. So mindfulness of the mind is one of them. And so that's the sutric level. So it's actually quite beautiful, but what Panchen Lama, First Panchen Lama says is that when you're sitting long enough, you will get to the state of spacious, clear lucidity, right? So like I always give the example because I like to tie in something that, of course, no one really talks about in classics Western philosophy is when Aristotle defines the mind in two ways. He says there's a passive quality and an active quality. Passive quality, he says, is clear wax. It has no quality, but takes the imprint of everything it sees. And then he says the active quality is like light. So what I said was amazing is that that's technically the Buddhist definition of the mind in whatever, 2nd century BC or whenever Aristotle was writing, I can't remember now, is basically clear and cognizing, right? So when you're sitting and doing Ma Mudra, it doesn't take too long before all of a sudden it's like, ding, you're in this super clear, awake, spacious state, and it's just wonderful. So what First Panchen Lama says is, that's just your mind. Like that's not emptiness, because otherwise you'd be enlightened and be Buddha, but that's just your conventional mind. So then the Vipassana part would be is that you try and really see that as a dependent arising. that what we call mind is just a way we think and talk about that clear lucidity. So that's, if you read that text by First Panchen Lama, that's the Sutra Mahamudra. But it's, you get the feeling in that text that he wants everyone to do Tantric Mahamudra, which is what we're doing here. If we're doing Kriya Tantra, or ultimately best, highest yoga tantras, that when we're doing regular Sutric Mahamudra, we're using a coarse conceptual mind. And that's why it's so hard, right? When we use highest yoga tantra, when we're doing the three lower classes of tantra, Kriya, Charya, and Yoga, we're still using coarse minds. When we're doing Anuttara Yoga, highest yoga tantra, we're using the mind of clear light inside your heart chakra. That is completely non-conceptual. So what's important about that is that mind doesn't get distracted. So my first teacher, again, Kelsing Tarshan, said if you wanted to do a Shine or Shamatha retreat, it's about 3 years, 2 to 3 years of the hardest work you'll ever do in your life, which is just sit, meditating on your breath in an image of Buddha till you get tranquil, abiding, total concentration. And then if you do, as David Gonzalez, my dear teacher, said, hey, do Tumo in 4 months, you've got tranquil, abiding. He's like, which one do you want to do? Lock yourself in a cabin in the woods for 3 years, not talk to anybody, or just at home in your basement, meditating on Tumo every day, and you get in about 3 months. Like there's no contest, right? So First Panchen Lama is just saying that technically your work in Sutric Tantra to isolate that conventional nature of the mind and get concentration, a bit of vipassana, will only help you when you go into start doing Tantra, which is great. But the one to do, of course, is using highest yoga tantra. Because at that point, when you put all the winds, I shouldn't be saying this, I'll get hit by lightning revealing tantric secrets, but if you can get all the winds to enter and remain and dissolve in the central channel, you no longer have conceptual minds. It's a state of non-duality you're in. And so when you turn that state of non-duality into meditating on emptiness, lickety-split, you get it. So doing Sutric Mahamudra retreat right now, Christine, is totally good. That's why I'm doing it. That'll only help you when you're going deeper with the more magical stuff of highest yoga tantra. Is that kind of clear or something?
Yeah, it really is. Okay. It's very clear. But the question is then, is it Sutra Mahamudra that I'm looking to do right now? I think so. I think it's just that quieting of the subtle mind. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot.
No worries. And that all habitually crosses over into your experience of higher tantra if you've got a good Sutric Mahamudra practice. Why? You don't cling to thoughts. You don't cling to those magical experiences you'll start having when you're doing deeper tantric work, right? You'll see that everything's just like a dream. So you won't be like, oh my goodness, like I'm the same as Jesus Christ or whatever, like, ding, 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 all this huge ego inflation by magical stuff. Like my teacher, David, he said, probably through personal experience, but, he said when you start getting highest yoga tantra realizations, you start having mystical visions constantly. And so the thing is they're like dreams, but you think they're real. And he says it's a byproduct of the purification of getting winds in the central channel. And so he said it's precisely at that point that if you don't have a good Sutric Mahamudra practice, that you'll become schizophrenic. Like you'll start believing in all this stuff. Right? Doug Winnicott, one of the greatest psychoanalysts in England, always said, what is mental illness? What is insanity? The insistence on belief. That's fascinating. In other words, the inability to take a perspective on your own experience makes you crazy, right? Because normally we're all just regular neurotic people where we can question our experience. Yeah, I'm having this. What do you think? I'm having doubts about myself. That's healthy. But if you're like totally fanatically convinced of a belief that no one, not even yourself, can disprove, then there's something wrong psychologically. And David said that that's what happens at these higher levels of tantra. You can go into that kind of psychosis. And when people tell you, Matthew, I think you're not a realized tantric yogi, I think you're just crazy. What do you know, Mom? I'm way ahead of you. I'm the spiritual being. Or even your teachers might be like, Rinpoche, like, Matthew, I think you're nuts. I'm better than you now, Rinpoche. You don't talk about seeing Buddhas directly. I can see them right now. And it's just like, no, actually, I think you need to go to the hospital for the weekend. So any of that good Sutric Mahamudra stuff will help us with Kriya Tantra, will help us with our highest yoga Tantra. So, good. Thank you. That's a good question. Anything else? Anything to add? Or what do you think, Rob? Do you have a question? I think you've always got great questions. So
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. I just wanted to ask, when you speak about Kriya Tantra and highest yoga Tantra, I have some confusion over, do you alternate? Like they seem kind of mutually exclusive. I was wondering if you could speak to that. That with highest yoga Tantra, if you're practicing that, it's kind of like anything goes. Whereas Kriya Tantra is you have to live more like a saint 24/7 while you're practicing that. Yeah, so if you could just speak to that a little bit, please.
yes, and that's thank you, excellent question. And you can see, at least in the Tibetan tradition, of course, if I go to Chinese Pure Land temples like I do in Hong Kong and say, well, just to let everybody know here, twice a month I eat meat and drink alcohol, it'd be like, throw me right out the door into the street. What kind of Buddhist does that? But of course, that's the difference with highest yoga Tantra, for instance, and Kriya Tantra, which of course you don't do soak practice, right? You don't do any of that. You're a strict vegetarian. And not just strict vegetarian, you don't have black foods. So when we did the Kriya Tantra retreats in Toronto, when they're cooking, the cooks are like, okay, let's get this straight. Okay, veggie, a lot of us are vegan here anyway, but no garlic, no onions, no radish or those kinds of root vegetables, no hot sauce, even not really spicings, more bland. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And they're like, oh man, like this is gonna suck. And I'm just like, look, I'm sorry, I don't make these rules up. So we had like bland dal like every day like this, like because it's like I don't know what we can cook here. So it's very, very strict. Whereas of course when you're looking with Anuttara Yoga, for instance, there aren't those kinds of restrictions, for instance, for dietary, amongst other things, right? So the difference with that, of course, basically is the three lower class of Tantra, Rob, work with a coarse mind. So working with a coarse conceptual mind, let's say Kriya Tantra in particular, all the sort of sutric rules of Buddhism kind of apply to your practice, right? And with Anuttara Yoga, technically, if you're doing it, in the old days, you should be this very advanced person. If you're working with the central channel, working with non-conceptual minds or non-duality, then you can see there's more of allowances around those things because we're not making these more conceptual distinctions therapeutically for ourselves. So what a friend of mine said, which is best, she said, like, oh, I always see when we do Kriya Tantra, we're building a pure container for your practice, right? Because it's a little bit more coarse, a little bit more, I don't want to say introductory, but you have to support your baby mind in the practice. So if it's all about creating good karma and really keeping your bodhisattva vows pure and these Kriya Tantra vows pure, you have to wear all white, right? That's hard. Like during retreat, or technically if you're one of these Kriya people all the time, you'd be wearing white clothes all the time. Like there's some, I know in Santeria tradition, they do that. There's some people that wear all white certain days of the week and stuff like that, right? So that would be an example. And then amongst other things, like I sort of went through that little list of things that you observe as a Kriya Tantra practitioner. So the tendency, what you get unfortunately, is people might say, well, I'm this advanced practitioner, I'll leave all you guys in the kindergarten class, the romper room class doing Kriya Tantra, whereas me, Mr. Saintly Matthew, I'm working at this higher level, anything goes. But that's not the case. Like the only difference between Anuttara Yoga and Kriya Tantra is just time. you're going to get enlightened Kriya Tantra. I've heard one line, like within 1 or 2 lives, 3 lives, something. Whereas Anuttara Yoga, you can get enlightened in a matter of a few years. And so, for the intensity of that practice, it's a lot harder in some ways, but there's more allowances. Whereas we're with Kriya Tantra supporting our more beginner's mind by making everything externally pure, doing magical rituals and living a very strict lifestyle. But it doesn't mean Kriya Tantra is like we talk about lower Tantra, but it's only lower in terms of whether we're working with a conceptual mind or a non-conceptual mind. It's not lower that it sucks. Like I've had some people say, well, why do you Kriya Tantra? It's for losers, kind of like it's just like, no, it's not. It's going to get you enlightened just like anything else will. And it's very, very subtle and beautiful if you do it right. And like I said, the benefit for Kriya Tantra is when you do it properly, you will get results that everyone can believe in your own life, like sometimes demonstrably so. Whereas I find with Anuttara Yoga, you're working at subtler levels. So you do a retreat, it's great, you're all blissed out, but sometimes it's a little more ambiguous on progress. Like you can look back and say, oh, okay, I've changed in a positive way, right? That was amazing, I'm going deeper. But sometimes with Kriya Tantra, at the end of the retreat, all these things happen. So it produces more faith and makes you want to practice more Dharma. And that's a benefit for doing it. So in a lot of ways, but to have the magic happen coarsely, you need that very tight, pure, symbolic universe to live in during the practice. Right. So I don't want to like sound like I'm boasting or something, but the last Kriya Tantra Medicine Buddha retreat, we all did the fire puja together, and all these magical things happened at the fire puja, and it was like, oh, so people are like, oh my God, that's amazing, and it's like, oh, that's not just because we're amazing. It's not. It just means that it worked, like it caught the gears of the wheel, or it landed, because we've all been so strict with the Kriya Tantra protocols, we were able to really produce a magical result. And then now no one disbelieves Tantra. So one of the participants who I like very much, a little bit cynical mind, right? So during the retreat, I could just tell her like, rolling their eyes and stuff. And at the end of the retreat, he's like, dude, like, I'm a believer. I'm just like, okay, well, good. If this makes you want to do more practice now, it's worked as a retreat. Now you want to do more medicine Buddha practice, right? Does that answer the question a bit, Rob, or have I left anything out? Or
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. But you see, when we were taught all this stuff by David Gonzalez like 20 years ago, he really said that he felt a lot of these traditions, the Kriya Tantra traditions, were going to die out in the world. It's his own personal opinion, because they're too hard and they're too demanding, in that most people would just go into higher tantras, almost bypassing Kriya Tantra because it's too difficult. If you do it the traditional way, if you do it sort of without all of these precepts and rules, it's a lot easier. Will you get the same result? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a High Lama. I don't really know. All I'm saying is that the old traditional way of doing Kriya Tantra, I think, is too demanding for most people nowadays. It's too difficult. And like I said, when you do the permission retreat, I'll go over this in a class, but you have to, there's different rules of how many mantras you have to do. But basically, anything under about 14 syllables, you have to count 100,000 mantras per syllable of the mantra. So if you do a Chenrezig retreat, it's 600,000 mantras you have to count, because it's 6 syllables. Right? You do Tara retreat, 10 syllables, 1,000,000 mantras, right? That's a lot. Who has time? Unless you guys, some of you are retired, that's fine. But most people, if you're younger, you're working, you have a family, it's like, how am I going to find time to do 1,000,000 mantras? So this is why, so people just say, well, I'm just going to count 100,000, or I'm just going to do 10,000, and kind of do their own version of the retreat, right? But the traditional rules are very strict. I still have to do it, was Black Manjushri. In Black Manjushri, you've got the main mantra is Amarapatsana D, so that's 600,000 mantras. And then the long mantra, it's over, I guess, 21 syllables. You just do a flat 10,000. So 610,000 mantras. And it's like, I've tried to start that retreat and keep breaking it, because it's like, it's too much. Like, I have to probably wait till I'm retired to do it. which kind of stinks, but I want to do it the traditional way. So you see, that I think that's one of the reasons these traditions aren't as popular as they were, but they're very old. Like I always say, they're from another world and another time, you know. So we have a chit practice called Black Dakini from the Gelugpa Dakini lineage, and that when you do that chit practice, it's about 3.5 hours long. So if you're doing a retreat, you have to do that 4 times a day. And I just think, who did this? Like, then I think, oh, it's some guy, a shepherd in eastern Tibet, where he's just like, wow, 100 miles of nothing in any direction, no phone, no TV. Yeah, I can do a 3-hour sadhana because it's just like, it's just me out here, you know, with my goats. It's like from another place and time where people had more space in their lives and time to do things, right? So is that okay? Does that help? Or yeah? Okay, good. Very good. Anything else? I think the big thing with this, of course, is just to try it yourself at home, this Kriya Tantra stuff, and see what you think. That's the big thing.
Matthew, I do have another question. I don't want to dominate the
No,
conversation,
no.
but so in your last class, you were talking about the motivation to practice bodhicitta, or to become a bodhisattva. And you used the example of a person running into a fire, you know, being in a fire, leaving the fire, and going back in because of concern for children or something like that. So I don't really know even how to form my question, so I'll be stumbling along a little bit. But so that person, I can't imagine that person came out of the fire and went, children, I think I'll go back. In my imagination, what happens is that person impulsively runs out of the fire, realizes what has happened, and impulsively runs back into the fire. So they're clearly motivated by something other than their own well-being. But is that truly compassion, or is that impulse that doesn't really have a clear definition? And if it's impulse, does it come from some past life experience of experiencing bodhicitta or having been a bodhisattva?
That is a fabulous question. And I think we were talking, I attended my dear Dharma friend Martin's long room class this morning before this. It was amazing, out of Montreal. And we talked a little bit about, he was talking about bodhicitta and stuff there, and about meditation, what meditation means. I just want to start, there's a great, one of the great philosophers, American philosophers, one of the gifts to the world, William James, as you know, amazing pragmatist philosopher, absolute luminary star in American culture, right, 19th and 20th century. But he had a funny thing where he said, when I see a bear, of course, it's a very American example, European people wouldn't be scared of bears, but he's like, when I see a bear and run away from fear, is it me feeling fear that's caused me to run? Or am I caused to run first as an impulse and then interpret that as fear? Mm-hmm. So it's a big, in other words, is there some kind of like almost neurological reaction that I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Oh my God, I'm scared because there's a bear chasing me. Or is it just like, oh my God, a bear, I better run, right? So I know this sounds like a very sort of pedantic question, right? But it's a similar thing like running in to save the kids or family, or even let's say a stranger in a burning house. Like you say, is that just sort of a blind impulse by past life karma, or is there an actual volition there, like some kind of will or decision being made, right? What's interesting is that there's a great line just on this. Famous French philosopher and existentialist, an absolute genius, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, his masterwork, the great books of the 20th century, Phenomenology of Perception, ends his book with that, on action ethics in the world, with precisely that. And he quotes a quote from Antoine Saint-Exupéry, who wrote The Little Prince, Petit Prince, which we all love for those who've read it. I don't know which other book he says, but Saint-Exupéry says about saving someone from a fire in a house. And he says, you don't even think. He's like, it's a whole movement of your life where your mind, your spirit, your body, and almost like the universe itself, the inertia of the universe itself is behind you in that act to desperately run in and save your kid from a burning house, right? So that's what's interesting is what our actions are creating who we are in the world we live in, right? So what's interesting is that the Tibetan term for meditation is gom. So of course, what everyone uses the term meditation, but what gom means, the actual definition is familiarizing yourself, your mind, with a virtuous object, an object that creates happiness. So what Martin was saying today is, that's kind of become familiar or habituated to it. So what we can talk about, I take this more into, again, William James and sort of existentialist views and Aristotle's views on action, is habits. When you've got the right habits, they're automatically done, right? If I'm always exercising, getting up at 5 a.m. for work to go for a jog, I don't even think about it. It's just done. Like even at 4:45, I wake up before my alarm gets off. I'm getting out of bed to get my jogging shoes on to go running because it's a habit, and it's a virtuous habit, keeping my blood pressure down or whatever else. All meditation is doing that. So what Maurice Merleau-Ponty says is that what your body is, it's not this, it's your system of daily habits that embodies you. It makes you a certain kind of person in a certain world that you live in, right? So right now we've created the deluded Matthew soap opera world of samsara, where I'm unhappy. All Tantra is right from the very bottom, creating a new world that it's at the gom, familiarize yourself with a virtuous object. You're embodying a deity. And once it's embodied enough, you are the deity, right? So I always say there's very little difference in deity yoga and your regular existential, stupid, samsaric self. They're both empty. They're both based on habits. One's happy and blissful, one's miserable, right? So which one? So with bodhicitta training, the reason we do all that bodhicitta training in sutra, sevenfold cause and effect, equalizing, exchanging self with others, is making compassion automatic. So my friend, when he was young, like back in the early 90s, they opened a peace monument in Ottawa, Canada, and they brought His Holiness Dalai Lama over to give a talk. And of course, everything he says is so awesome. But they had all people there, and he was talking, it was cold, and a little kid on his dad's back had his toque on, and he took his toque off and put it on His Holiness Dalai Lama's head to keep him warm. And the Dalai Lama said, see, it's not hard, compassion. You just act. Like this little kid, it's not like, hey, I'm going to embarrass myself here. I shouldn't touch His Holiness, whatever. It's just like, hey, someone's cold. Here's my hat. Right? So when you get to that level, it is kind of like that Zen act without acting, or Taoist, be like the water. Like you've trained so much in compassion, it's automatic. You just run in and save people. The thing with bodhicitta is normally we have that with our parents, our girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, partner, significant other, our dog, right? Can we extend that out where you can do it to strangers? So Maitreya is teaching that you get sevenfold cause and effect. Well, just see everyone as being part of the family. We've all reincarnated being each other's parents and brothers and sisters and everything. Technically, it's one big family. So don't fight with your family at Thanksgiving dinner, so to speak. When everyone needs a help, just help. Shanti Deva, equalizing and changing self with others. We're all the same. Why? All of us are miserable. All of us want to be happy. So it's a simple And so what Shantideva says is, how do I practice that? Through taking and giving. Take on the suffering, give back the happiness, right? So it's automatic. So all tantric bodhicitta is, which is the necessary bodhicitta to do tantra, in particular highest yoga tantra, is you have that habit, but to all sentient beings, and you're acting now, right? You're not putting it off. You're dropping everything to make this the focus of your life. The core value, vision, and project of your life is just doing this. And the idea is that we're in a burning house. Everyone's going to burn in this house. You've gotten out. What are you going to do? I got to get back in there and help people, right? And this happens all the time. With people do this all the time. Strangers help people out all the time, right? So it, like Levinas, one of my favorite Jewish philosophers in general 20th century, he always said that that's our core experience is ethical. And what he says, it's the face. There's always someone that needs help coming into your life. Help. What do you do? And he says the only obstacle is your own selfishness, where it's like, oh, shit. Oh, now I have to help this person, right? But where is the limit there? It's just in you. It's not in the universe, not in that other person. That's why I like Levinas so much. It's very Jewish. It's like, I have to help people, but oh God, do I really? Like there's that struggle, right? And what he says is that's the hidden God of the Old Testament. When Moses looks up and sees God's bare ass, anytime you help somebody, you get a glimpse of the divine as it goes past you, as God walks past you on Mount Sinai. But it's a difficult thing. It needs training. It needs training. And that's what all your Lamrim Sutra work is. So when you get to Tantra, it's easy. You know, you can start seeing all I'm doing as a deity is helping. That's all deities do is help. So you're just, all deities do is run into that burning house to save people, right? Out of samsara. Is that I've gone on and like I always do. Is that helpful, Christine, or is it still?
Yeah, it is helpful. Yeah, I mean, it's a good reminder. But I guess I'm still kind of caught in that spot of impulse. You know, I mean, if that person that ran back into the house to save their family is the same person that outside of the burning house and the routine of his or her life is not inclined towards understanding and compassion and personal well-being even, but in that moment is faced with a crisis beyond his or her own imagination. Something then happens. Yeah. And it's the juncture at which that something happens is that the kick over the edge into being a person with a life of compassion for others, or recognition and compassion for others. Or is that's where
all
I'm
of this
puzzled.
is karmically determined, right? All of it from past lives and this life, and that's where the training comes from. Is that if you talk, like, let's say weightlifters, they always say you just get stronger and stronger the more you lift. Like if someone says, okay, bench press 500 pounds, no, you know, but let's say first it's 100, 150, 225, and then it just starts going up because it's almost like in biology with emergent qualities, right? And all of a sudden you can do it. And you're like, when did that happen? Like all of a sudden last week, I lifted 500 pounds. Like 2 years ago, I couldn't even come close to that. What happened? So we always look at these hero or heroine or like superstar things where it's like the guy that helped everyone in the plane accident or jumped underwater and fought off a shark and saved somebody, right? But the point is, the more you train in this, the more you're able to do those kinds of things. You know, like your awareness increases, your compassion. It's like working a muscle. And then it's just easier. With most of the time, as you know, it's not these heroic things. It's opening the door for someone, visiting when your mom, when you don't want to do it. You're leaving to go somewhere. Someone's got a flat tire. Do you help them? Someone's lonely. Your friend calls you. You're like, oh, that guy again, Matthew. Every time he's depressed. I have to go run these errands. But it's all these little acts, and it gets easier and easier to do, right? As you're growing into it. But it's all karma. It's all training. It's all cause and effect. It's all habits. That's karma is just literally just the habits of the mind. You've just trained your way, like all of us. All of us have trained ourselves to be just so selfish, even in our own life over the years. And in countless past lives, you've done that. So, like, stopping that train takes kilometers to stop, right? But the good thing is you're not alone. It's like to say, Buddhists can only do two things: teach you the truth, tell you the truth, which is emptiness. That's it. You never listen. They're always like, hey, yeah, what? Everything's empty. Yeah, whatever. And then it's like, hey, like, that's all they're doing. But they also bless people's minds. They send down inspiring energy. So traditionally, it's a very big Asian thing. We probably a little more cynical. But sometimes out of the blue, your heart opens and you're able to do something. You're able to be happy. You're having a depressing day. All of a sudden, you're positive. Old Tibetan way, Chinese way, they always say a Buddhist bless your mind. Like somehow karmically, there's a space and they just shoot in green tar. It's like, I'm making Matthew positive for 10 seconds. And then all of a sudden, and that might uplift you for the rest of the day or help you do something, which is a lot of times why people pray the Buddhists to bless them to be able to do projects to help. It's like, I have to do this family dinner. Like, please, Buddhas, send down this good energy that it can help me, They can't do it for you, but you know what it's like if some people just pay life coaches or gym coaches just to stand there and go, you can do it, Matthew. I believe in you. You're amazing. Really? You think I'm amazing? And you're paying someone money to say that. Buddhists do that for free, right? That's all you're kind of doing when you're doing. That's why so much of sadness are about these requests to the gurus and all these praises to the Buddhas. They don't need that. Green tar doesn't need you sucking up to her. But it's this idea of invoking them, opening that space to receive that energy. So when you become a Buddha, that's all you'll do is just uplift people, motivate them, and teach them emptiness. That's it. That's all you can do, right? So kind of interesting, right? So it's getting late here. Anything, just conclude, anything else, comment? Or I think probably when I just give you people a little bit more of the structural stuff on Kriya Tantra, you might have a little bit more questions about that in the next classes I'll record. But in the meantime, all good? Okay, everybody's smiling, so I think that's good. So how about we just leave it there then? And I'll send some more recordings, and just excellent questions, amazing discussion, and thank you so much for coming and for sharing today. So I'll just press stop here. Hang on.